We're going down, and we go a few hundred yards, and all of a sudden there's the unmistakable noise of a bear clawing its way up a tree. And we haul ass into this thicket and it's not a black bear. We come in basically in amongst a sow grizzly standing at the base of the tree, and it's her two cubs.
Oh gosh.
Scratching around on the bark.
All right, everybody. Got Jim to my right. Across from us, virtually, we have Hunter, accomplished outdoorsman, true woodsman, host of MeatEater, the television show, and author of many great books, Stephen Rinella. Now,
keep going, man. I was liking that.
Oh yeah, I always like to open with a little flattery.
Yeah, it works.
Just some general flattery. It's all true though. Those are all facts. But now, speaking of author, Steve, you guys just recently released the MeatEater Guide to Wilderness Skills and Survival. Now, I'm holding that book right here, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish this signed copy of the book was mine.
But it ain't.
Whose is it?
It's not. It could be. I'm talking to the listeners now. It could be yours.
That's right.
Oh.
So stay tuned for the very end of the podcast, post our regular close to find out how you might be able to become the owner of this very book that's sitting right here. It may just save your life.
It may. There is, I do believe, actually.
We got a letter from a guy that bought that book, and he was hiking the Appalachian Trail with his girlfriend and made a number of missteps and got him in a dicey situation. And he wrote in to say that he used that book to start a fire. And he said he had already read the first 50 pages and he burned them all. He sent a photo of them.
That's hilarious. I do.
So I'm we should have mentioned on the bottom of it, like, if all else fails, burn this book.
Just that, exactly. Used for kindling. I did like the fact that you guys did lawyer this up here a bit. It does say it contains general information relating to wilderness skills and survival. It's not intended to serve as a diagnosis tool. So basically, you should preemptively save your own life by reading and then preparing yourself. Not necessarily. Sounds like that guy maybe lucked out a little bit there, having the book on hand. And it did actually then help save his life, perhaps. But
I think
yeah. I'm glad you got so far into the book that you found the disclaimer.
Well, there's some medical advice ish in there, you got to be careful. But I think you guys need to advertise the book. Not only is it advice, it's part of your kit that you can carry with you. It's
also a lot of stuff I want to experiment with now. I want to try cattail. I can't believe I haven't eaten one yet.
I'm not generally a fan of book burning, but I guess if it's to save your life, there's exceptions.
Did you guys get to the part of that book where it deals in sort of the philosophy and practice of cannibalism?
Ooh, I haven't gotten there yet. Sounds juicy.
Yeah, the way it's laid out, most chapters are laid out like this. You might read it and not realize that this is how it works, but it generally works like most of the chapters flow sort of like best case to worst case scenarios, right? So if you get into the water chapter, there's a chapter on water. It starts out kind of like how to plan water consumption, like how much water do you need for intake, how much water, like for car camping, what are the best ways to transport, stabilize water, store water, right? How much do you need? Then it gets into, okay, like kind of normal camping procedure where you're utilizing surface water, right? You're utilizing readily available surface water. How do you purify and all the different treatments and best practices? And then it as the situation devolves, you wind up into you can't find surface water. You have no receptacle in which to carry it. If you did find it, you have no purification equipment with you. Like, now what do you do? The food chapter flows similarly. Starts out like packing, right? Like packing food for expeditions, trips. And we kept joking about that as we go to like hits the fan, we kept joking about when things really get bad and people start eating their buddies. And so we talked a little bit about what having no personal expertise there. We just talked a little bit about some of the philosophy around cannibalism.
yeah. Theoretically, like I'm sure there's an etiquette involved, or I guess some.
Do you think
some side?
I guess if you're
etiquette.
If you're friends,
we asked a lot. We went and interviewed a lot of people, and put them. And you guys could do this with yourselves right now, like. And I invite you to do it. We interviewed a lot of people. Like, if you're out and something bad happened, let's just say, and you died, would you be looking down from the heavens, upset that your buddies ate you? We couldn't find anyone that would hold it against them.
No. I was like unequivocally, like you said, I was like, no.
Right.
No.
Be all right with it. I don't need that body anymore.
Yeah.
If
have at her.
I'm just curious around I'm curious around the science behind it, because you hear because not many people do it, or like at least document. I don't know, but that's a weird conversation in of itself, I'm sure. But there isn't a whole lot of like, some people say, oh yeah, if anybody who is cannibal, they get all shaky or something, like they just.
But you guys did. I think you did a podcast talking about it.
I guess I missed that.
Like there
must have
were
missed
like
that one.
Health ramifications from like a tribe that was engaging in cannibalism.
They were eating. Yeah, that was eating. That was like a ritualistic consumption of brain.
Okay.
Oh,
gotcha.
And some issues came out of that.
Well, Jim,
if you ever hear of a fella named Cabeza de Vaca?
No.
He was in the 1500s. He was a Spaniard, part of the Navarre. I think the Navarre's expedition. They were shipwrecked in Florida. Then they made a raft and got shipwrecked again around Galveston, Texas. And he was the first European to go to all these places. Maybe the first European to ever lay eyes on a bison. First European to make contact with a bunch of tribes along the Gulf Coast. He would talk. He later, when he described his adventures, mentioned a tribe where they would burn the bodies of their dead and basically make a sort of milkshake. Not a milkshake, but make like a little shake.
Like an ash shake.
I wasn't expecting that.
Not an ash shake.
Right.
Not a twerk.
Not like the title of a modern day hip hop song.
No.
And consume that. But anyhow, that's how the book works. That like good case to worst case in a lot of lot of issues.
Well, number one, Jim, I guess here's a tip. If you ever do eat me, and if I'm dead, have at her. Stay away from the brain. There's not much there anyway. And then that's good. That order of operations makes sense though. Like, because that's kind of going to be your assessment. You're like, okay, I need some water.
Yeah.
If you're what's the easiest? Okay, there's none of that. You
yeah,
kind of work your way down the line.
Hopefully you don't find yourself like you blink and everything was fine. And now you're in the worst case scenario immediately.
Yeah.
That can happen, but hopefully that doesn't.
Oh, we talk a lot about how in the book there's a lot of psychology, or I don't want to call it psychology, but there's a lot of stuff about situational awareness and
yeah,
how A sort of flows to B, sort of flows to C.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot of, with television shows and movies and things, there's a lot of these situations where things go like catastrophically bad for people extremely quickly, right? Mm-hmm. We're joking about cannibalism. There's that famous situation where that soccer team was in that plane crash, and right. But typically when you look at like how people get in trouble, quite often it's sort of like a little thing happens and there's ramifications of that little thing. And then there's a bad decision that's made, and then it gets a little worse. And there's this cascading badness that develops.
And usually a state of denial about the fact that things seem to be getting worse. It's like, well, that happened, but we're still not we're all right.
Or panic, right? You're like, it's getting pretty bad. Hit the panic button. But yeah, I mean, for sure, like a compounding of events and choices, you know, and you're right though. And I know one thing you talked about though, Steve. Actually, I think we're talking about mainstream, I guess, survival television. This is years ago, but you're like, man, you know, people are always trying to show you how to get out of the wild, and you're like, I'm trying to show people how to get in to the wild, and that's something that definitely always stuck with me. As I hadn't really thought about that type of content that way, but it's very true. And there's no doubt that when you go into wild places, chasing wild animals or whatever, what have you, there's a certain level of risk that you take on, and not that you're seeking to necessarily put yourself in a life-threatening or precarious situation, but you want to go prepared. But some of that risk is also part of the sense of adventure that you're seeking at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, if you just punched out every time that you felt some risk, then you would never really... You might be like, oh, I saved my life or something, but you'd also never really know whether or not you could have actually persevered through that, and then in a smart way.
Just there's a little that's that little bit of uncertainty, you know, is kind of part of the adventure. Now, I mean, you know, the important thing is, and I think what this book does an amazing job of, it's not like sensationalized stuff. It's full of super practical, awesome tips to give a person, even an experienced outdoorsman, a ton to think about. And then if you're just getting into the outdoors, I mean, it's like an encyclopedia of, you know, getting started and being safe and going into the wild prepared. So a situation that could be potentially catastrophic, life-threatening, turns out to be maybe just, you know, part of a good story, or probably in a lot of cases doesn't even become a situation at all.
Yeah. We imagined the book and going in on it to be like more of a manual for people who have, like, they go into the woods or into the mountains, into the wilderness, kind of wanting to get something done. You know, like I've traveled a lot to some of the wildest places on earth, right? Like as a journalist or making a show or as a hunter, as an angler. So it's like, I'm going out because I have like a set of goals, and the goals could be that you're a professional biologist, outdoor professional. Could be that you're just trying to like introduce your kids to great adventures, whatever. Like you're going out to do something. How can you be effective and like make sure that you get done what it is you wanted to get done in a safe fashion? It's not like if you're in case you're on a cruise ship and you get stranded on an island with nothing but a Bowie knife. It's just like not starting from that sort of, it's not starting from that space, right? It's starting from a space of like a lifetime among people who spend time outdoors and they're goal oriented, you know?
Yeah. You want to go have these experiences, but it's also a good idea to get home safe.
For sure. Speaking of getting home safe or not, and uncertainty and stuff, that was what we were going to talk about today. Is that not?
Yes.
Am I right?
Yeah. So I think how we got this lined out, Steve, is
it was a great transition, by the way.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
There's no way the audience would detect your anxiousness to get on with the meat of the.
I tried to hide it. Now it's out in the open, but
yeah. Also, when you kicked me in the shin, Jim, that's how I knew.
I thought that was the table.
So sometimes I'm getting started here, Jim. Sometimes the best lessons are lessons learned the hard way, as long as you live to tell about it. So Steve is a master storyteller, and so we've got him here to recount 3 of his harrowing near-death experiences and lessons learned.
That's right.
That sound okay to you, Steve?
Sounds great, man. I even made notes on a legal pad.
Oh, wow.
Now, they're not long. They're just little notes, but I made some notes here.
I'm outnumbered. Usually Mark's the only one with notes.
I like to have a few notes. Jim is the king of wing. He just sends it.
Mark always prints his notes. He's not afraid of a paper ocean.
No.
Oh, really? Now, listen, man, I've had so many harrowing near-death experiences, but I just wanted to make sure I had 3. So that's why I wrote them down.
Perfect. 3's a magic number. So yeah, that'll do. We also heard too that like 2 of them may be part of one, but they're married together. Like they can't be split up.
I can't split them up.
That's just the way it has to go.
They're intertwined.
Well, how do we get into this?
How do we? What's like, I mean, do you have one that if you were going to tell somebody around a campfire your harrowing near-death experiences, is there one that you're just like, this is the one, this is how we get people in the right mindset of thinking about almost dying? Like, is there one of those stories that you got? Like,
I'll tell you, I'll start out with my one that's most haunting, but it's based on, do I just go now? Do I just do it?
Do it.
Okay. Nothing happened. But it's so haunting. No, it did, but it didn't. It's so haunting because without a lot of fanfare, it was like a thing that just would have been just so cataclysmic. Okay. So, Mark, you've been to my fish shack.
Yeah.
We one year made I don't want to call it the mistake, but before I even married my wife, we went up for Christmas and New Year's. Okay.
Okay.
And you're at a high latitude. And there's just very little daylight. Right.
Sure.
4 hours, whatever, 5 hours. It's just dusky. Right. And that time, and that place gets 13 feet of rain a year.
Right.
Not freaking inches, 13 feet of rain. Okay. So, and a lot of it comes that time of year. It's just foggy. The temperature is sort of like hovers between, 20 and the low 30s. It's just like wet, a lot of snow, a lot of fog, very cold. The water's very cold. And
Great
it winds
time
up
to
being
visit.
hard to go do anything because everything takes a while. Everything's far away.
Well, I think it could be. I know I'm interrupting here, Steve, but I think it could be important to point out in that region, like what you're describing there, that actually sounds like what could be a summer day in Southeast Alaska. So
dude,
to be in like the winter time frame, like I love it up there, and I've only been up there in the summer. It's never crossed my mind to be like, you know where I want to go in the winter? Remote Southeast Alaska.
We determined that it was a real bad idea. Not a bad idea, but we determined like that it was like you don't go up there with a big list of stuff you're gonna do. Like, oh yeah, we'll go hunting over here and fishing over there, and it's tough. It's tough. Get a little duck hunting in, you're good, but you can't do anything ambitious. So one night we go out, or day, like the very short part of the day, we go out to do some deer hunting, and we hunt till dusk. But we're a long way back from our shack. And we got a long boat ride, 6-7 mile boat ride in the dark. And I want to wedge a later story in here real quick. I once in Ketchikan, which is where we fly into to then fly out to our shack. I once in Ketchikan met a Coast Guard guy who was driving a cab, and he left the Coast Guard. And he was talking about, man, you get so sick of going to these boat distress calls and everybody's dead. And he's like, the one time I go to one where they made it to the beach, 2 people, they're dead on the beach. Leaning against a tree are 2 dead people.
That is a downer.
Oy. Yeah.
So anyhow,
when it's only light out 4 hours a day too, and you're just coming up on dead people in boats.
Said he was explaining that some of the guys that work on one of the island the airport's on, they used to commute to Revy Island. And he said that they used to it was like a standard practice among old timers to tie a line around your waist to your boat so that it was easier to find your body. So we're driving back at
do these
night.
guys a courtesy.
We're driving back in like kind of like darkness, which is so stupid. And I'm with my 2 brothers and my wife. So it's like the people in the world that like I love the most. And we hit a log so hard that the engine, the outboard, is all of a sudden kind of like up in the boat. You know what I mean? Like it hits and like, bam, the bow goes down and takes over this huge wave of water, but not quite enough to sink the boat.
Yeah.
So it was over instantly. It was like, bam, engine comes up, wham, wham, down, boat's full of 12 inches of water, but like not enough.
Yeah.
It was simply a matter of scooping the water out. But dude, I think about it all the time because like, I don't know, 6 inches more water, whatever. It's like no one was going to survive that.
No.
Do you
just a slight variance and completely different outcome. 100%.
Yep.
Like guaranteed.
No cell signal. You know, you always have like a box with stuff in it, whatever. Like you're going to like get your VHS radio out and figure that whole thing out and realize the batteries are dead. I don't know. It's just like no one was going to make it. And I always think like that could have like so easily, that would have been sort of like this thing that was in the news, like all this family, everybody moves on.
That is one of those super eerie things where you're just like, man, that just could have been it. Like
when that goes down, is it a bit on a grand scale of like the spilled milk effect where like it happens and you just sort of like, and you just kind of freeze, and afterwards everyone's a little bit like, wait a minute.
Oh yeah.
I picture it being awfully quiet for like a few seconds.
There's no it honestly like gives me like a sick feeling in my stomach because there's no sort of fanfare, you know. It's just been like everything I care about, including me, or in addition to whatever, like just boop. In a couple minutes.
All in one log hit.
Just like...
Yeah, in a few minutes. It'll just been...
Like just unplugging a cord.
Poof.
Yeah.
That one sticks in my head. The part 1A and B were... I've been in 2 main car crashes. And they happened very close proximity to each other. And they were both coming home from hunting trips. This one time, I had I was living in Montana, and I had a Ford Econoline van that I had traded a Husqvarna chainsaw and $250 for. And my old man helped me build like a bed in it and a cooking area, and my mom sewed me up these curtains out of this fabric that had a lot of little brook trout and brown trout and stuff. It was like a perv van. Like great camping
a little
van.
bit, but sounds great.
A great camping van.
Well, now I don't feel it. I was gonna be like, oh, that sounds nice, and then
okay, forget that part. It was a great van. It was very nice. It was 2-wheel drive, but you put chains on it on the back, and dude, you could plow snow with it. Loved it. So we went duck hunting one time, float hunting, and my brother was living in Bozeman, and I was living in Missoula. And I remember we have a conversation at the end of the hunt, like we co-owned a canoe. And we had a long discussion about who will take the canoe.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
And for whatever reason, like his needs seemed to, in our heads, trump our own. And decided that he would take the canoe. So we part ways. He goes east, I go west. We're sort of in the middle. He goes east, I go west. And I flying along and hit a bridge. And just off the road and start rolling like a bunch. What? And I remember the first thing that occurs to me is like, man, I'm glad Matt took the canoe. Just like in my head, like as I'm rolling, I'm like, I'm glad Matt took the canoe because that canoe would be taking a beating right now.
The most pressing thing right now is just the status of the canoe.
Our 80-pound aluminum grubbing canoe.
I mean,
so
that cost a guy $80.
So the funny part, you're gonna think like you're gonna be like, oh, he's exaggerating, but I'm telling you, like all the windows are blown out. I'm like I can't believe it, but I'm somehow completely unscathed. I kept being like, surely I must have broken bones, but I'm like standing and walking around like, Nothing's wrong. Now, the next day I was a little stiff, but here's the funny part. All the windows are blown out and there's already cars pulling over. And I had it like, and out in the snow is like dozens of shotgun shells, a half dozen ducks, like, I mean, spread out over like a 50-yard swath. And then I had a cooler, and in the cooler were some cold beers.
Just a yard sale.
And they're just out. And I remember like thinking that I need to sort of police my area ahead of the arrival of the authorities, because this just looks.
I don't like this isn't looking good for me right now.
So I remember I had a cooler, and I remember running around in the snow and like just trying to tidy things up in a way that didn't look so incriminating, man. Like, you know, like
in a way where there wasn't ammunition and beer everywhere.
Yeah.
Dead ducks, ammo, and beer. And there's more like.
Sounds like a party.
So that same year, man, I was in another big rollover that was equally scary, and this one shot a dead deer out the back of the truck.
Naturally.
Like, my girlfriend got a deer. She rolled her truck bad, and the deer is like kicked way out in the snow. But this where the near death thing comes in is we had just stopped, and I just got a big gas station coffee. Okay. Just bear that in mind as you hear me out on this, because we land upside down hanging in our seatbelts. And I can feel all my life's blood draining out of me, like my neck, ear, right? Like my blood is gushing out, hot blood gushing out of my body. And I feel, and like, sure enough, my hair's wet. It's all hot. And I'm like, oh man, now it's all over.
This is it.
And if I look at my hand, but the blood's not on the hand. Oh, that's weird, because clearly my life's blood is gushing out. And I feel again, and sure enough, my hair is like wet and matted with blood. I look at my hand, and it takes me a couple minutes to realize that it's my coffee.
That's got to be a.
It wasn't, in fact, my brains and blood.
That's good. Yeah. What a realization.
I just you go from
the sigh of relief.
You go from, oh my God, it's so bad, there's blood everywhere. It's just coffee, everybody.
I've got minutes. That's all.
And again, we both climbed out of there. We're totally fine. Got the deer back in the truck ahead of the arrival of the authorities.
I mean, that's a lesson for wearing your seatbelt, too. Only the deer who was not belted in was ejected from the vehicle.
That's right.
After those, I still suffer from it. Like, I grew up in Michigan, you know, the west shore of the west side of Michigan, the Lake Effect snow strip. Grew up driving in snow. Right. Accustomed to it, right? Was always cocky about it. I have psychologically from those twin incidents so close together. Haven't been in a crash since, but like psychologically, I have not recovered from that. I still feel when the snow and ice and coming onto a bridge, dude, I feel it in just a like I've been psychologically damaged.
Just chilling, like I'm white nut, like you're getting to it.
Feeling.
It's a real
Seeing
thing.
a bridge.
That's
when
traumatic.
Like a little snow and it's slick, and I see a bridge. It's like a gut punch.
Bridges are brutal, man, because all that air rushes over and under them. They get colder than the regular road. Yeah.
You think, man, like an oncoming vehicle, dude? Oh, I hate it. Here's my last one.
Yeah.
And this is one where nothing happened, which is kind of a funny story. Because I got a handful of like Grizzly experiences, and they do take on they become magnified in your head. So there's like a psychological component to it, I think, you know. Like I think if you look at sort of like humans, one of the, we haven't carried with us the for tens of thousands of years or whatever, we haven't carried with us the feeling of becoming like the laughing stock of the internet, right? But we've carried with us the feeling of not wanting to get killed by something, a big animal.
I would agree. I would agree with that. I feel like
live it.
There's some innate human things. Like, I think it's fairly normal to be scared of snakes and spiders. To be like, I don't like that. I'm going to stay away from that.
Yeah.
Or, grizzlies with giant teeth and claws.
Yeah, and then the really bigness.
Large.
Yeah, they do that work. There's that work that's been done around, children, right? With no exposure to snakes have a seeming like a hardwired revulsion.
Really?
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that. It's interesting. It makes sense. I don't know.
So it's like, if anybody's ever like, oh, it's a snake, cool, whatever. It's unnatural. Seemingly,
like
to me,
kids,
it seems.
And they show kids certain toxic spiders and stuff. There's sort of they don't know about it, but they have like a kind of like there's like an innate like, uh-oh.
Interesting.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's, a little self-preservation.
I think as humans, we're born with a little bit more than we give ourselves credit for.
You said you used to stick snakes down your shirt as a kid. We were just talking about this
I
before
know.
we jumped on, because I was saying as a kid, I used to like go fishing with my dad, and I'd stick the leeches on my finger and watch the leech like latch onto my finger. And now I think to myself, like, why did I do that?
But you wouldn't do it now. Yeah,
I wouldn't do it now. And it's not like, obviously, and I even read in the book, leeches don't necessarily tend to carry any super dangerous disease, but it's just like, why would you want a parasite on you? And you would stick snakes down your shirt.
I don't think you're thinking about it in those terms. So here's where I was coming. I think as a boy, as a youth, like, I was fascinated with dinosaurs, reptiles, catching frogs, things like that. And we had a lot of garter snakes that never seemed to pose a threat, right? Like, everybody had told me they don't, they won't bite you, which I think they actually can. Not off.
Tell you what,
I'm like,
there's one over by the old butcher shack that we got. It's a very aggressive garter snake.
I'm not sure that's even a garter snake.
Or a milk snake or something. I don't know.
Anyway,
it'll snap at you.
I also
aggressive garter snake.
Very, very.
If you saw the look in his eye, but there was a lot of older kids in the neighborhood, and so they'd be like, handle the snake, put the snake in your shirt. I'm like, okay, you're 10, you're cool, I'll do it, And now looking back, maybe it wasn't a good idea. I never did get bit. I'm not saying you're not going to get bit, but also that's not something I would do now either. So I don't know, kind of whatever. There's that for you, everybody.
You have 2 kids, right, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. Go down to the pet store and borrow a rabbit and borrow biggest snake they can get.
Right.
Put one in the one kid's bed. Put the other one in the other kid's bed. And at nighttime, see what reactions you get.
I'll report back.
And you can publish a scientific paper about it and be like, tell you what, man, kids don't like snakes.
You want to get clicks. That's one way to do it. That reminds me of a story my brothers had.
The effects of rabbits and snakes on kids and your relationship with your children by Mark Boardman.
That reminds me of a story my brothers told when they were in school and a teacher was trying to explain how like people naturally learn things. And said, yeah, it's just like when your mother wanted to teach you the oven was hot, so she took your hand, turned on the oven, brought your hand over, and put it. And everyone in the classroom was thinking, "What the hell's wrong with you?" But
that's not that
so
didn't happen.
You take a snake and you put it in your child's bed, and they uncover it and they scream.
Some light biting.
In family lore, I don't remember back, but in family lore, it's believed that it's described that. I grew up on a lake. We had a dock, and kids are just kind of drawn to the lake. It's said that my dad, like, just to alleviate the fear of like what happens if they fall in, that he would at a very young age throw you off the end of the dock. To then be like, okay, like he fell off. I threw him off the dock. He made it to the beach. Now I can stop worrying about what happens when they're down the dock. Like, you answered the question. They fall. What happens if they fall in? Well, I'll tell you what happens if they fall in.
It's not a question anymore.
Yeah,
They get up to the beach.
Either way, you're gonna have an answer.
Did we? Was this a rabbit trail off? Because you were talking about things that people are naturally afraid of. Was this another near death experience? I feel like did we get into
my
that?
third one. The car crash was A and B,
Right.
2A and 2B. Do I keep going?
Was there another one involving snakes or something? Yes.
Let's keep the Grizzlies.
The Grizzlies. Okay.
Oh no, I'm fixing to talk about Grizzlies.
Yeah.
Grizzlies.
Unless I'm disinvited to, I don't know. I don't care.
No, I want you to.
No, I wanted to make sure we didn't accidentally miss it. Yeah.
Oh no. So elk hunting with my brother and taking our hot September midday nap, right? We get like a couple hours in the morning where something fun happens, a couple hours in the evening, and then you just take naps. Taking our hot midday nap up on a ridge. And I awake from my slumber at one point, and there is a bull. This doesn't normally happen, but I awake from my slumber, and there's like a bull in bow range staring at me. Who doesn't hang out long enough for me to recover from the shock and crawl over to where I kept my bow, But just inexplicably, he's just there.
I've had some of my best game encounters during or just post a good woods nap.
Yeah.
That's just fact.
You know why? Because you finally are being quiet.
Right.
That's it.
You're not moving. You're
finally
quiet.
not posing a threat.
It was a hell of a nap spot because I'm not joking. The next time I wake up, I hear another noise and wake up, and I mean in that spot is a black bear standing there who also freaks out and runs off when I'm ah, but runs off bad. There's no sense. Same as elk, right? There's no sense going and catching back up to them. They're just gone, That in the evening, we go out for our evening hunt. And I think one of us had a bear tag. I had a bear tag. That evening we go off for a hunt, and our evening hunt plan happens to bring us down the same gully that the black bear ran down.
It sounds like you had a good plan.
Later. We're going down, and we go a few hundred yards, and all of a sudden there's the unmistakable noise of a bear clawing its way up a tree.
Okay.
In this thicket.
Right on.
We're it's the bear. We have just done what we've never done, but always wondered why you never do it. We have now treed a black bear.
Right.
So it's we're this is the easiest pickings on the planet. And you'd hear it climbing. And my thinking is you rush in to make sure that it doesn't change its mind and run.
Yeah.
So I'm a tree hound, a baying hound, right? I'm going to go in there and make sure I'm going in there hellfire to make sure he goes up the tree, which he's already clawing on. And we haul ass into this thicket and it's not a black bear. We come in basically in amongst a sow grizzly standing at the base of the tree, and it's her two cubs.
Oh gosh.
Scratching around on the bark 5 feet up the tree. And we're in there shaking hands close.
You've run into a worst case scenario.
Yeah, in that case, things did really go from seemingly fine to pretty bad very quickly.
Hey, let's go over here.
And she doesn't do what you don't want her to do. She decides in this case not to just beat the shit out of us. And instead, the cubs are I don't even know how it happened. All of a sudden, the cubs are on the ground. She's woofing and clacking her teeth at us. And then literally, I remember at one point in time actually pushed one of her cubs up the hill.
Get out of here.
With the back of her hand.
Oy.
Unbelievable.
And did that, left, and not just did a what in the world do you think you're doing?
Wow.
She had to have been caught so off guard with your level.
Why are these idiots running in here?
Maybe it's one of those things like, sometimes you've seen it's in a movie or it's like a psychological thing where somebody who clearly doesn't pose a chance just acts so incredibly insane that everyone's like, geez, like this person must really be actually like, maybe they're capable of really effing me up right now because they're just like, clearly something must be going on.
This is unusual. These gentlemen seem overly serious.
They seem oddly confident. I'm kind of nervous.
Yeah, when you read descriptions of the Battle of Little Bighorn, one of the, I don't know, I can't remember if he was Sioux or Northern Cheyenne, but one of the participants later, when asked about Custer's charge, said how we felt as though they must have been drunk. It made so little sense.
I guess this is happening.
Yeah,
that's my three stories.
That sow. Maybe,
oh my gosh.
Maybe that sow was like, man, these guys are wasted. Those are good stories.
Something's wrong here. I should be on the other end of this. But yeah,
those are great stories.
Those are. I just can't sticking with the Grizzly thing here for a minute. Hear me out, because I have zero Grizzly experience at all. I think I've been maybe in places where maybe there might be a Grizzly, but I never saw it. And you see stuff people talking about. Obviously, they're formidable, not something you want to mess with. Certainly in a case like that where you got a sow and cubs. But you find yourself in a situation like you were in, and at that point, you're basically at the mercy of the sow. Am I correct? Like, there's not a whole lot you guys could have done if sow decides to be like, you know what, time to teach him a lesson.
No, we didn't carry pistols back then. We were super lackadaisical about pepper spray. We usually kept it in the bottom of our backpack.
Right.
Just in case it gives us enough time.
Yeah.
Everybody hold tight. I gotta.
If you can just press the pause button there, we'll get our spray out.
Oh, no, nothing you would have done, man.
Yeah.
Nothing you'd have done.
My experience, I don't have any experience with, I guess, grizzlies. I've been around a fair number of brown bears, which I guess that's semantics, right? But that's like on the coastal Alaska, the bears that I've run into. And my experience is I've never had. We did kind of get charged one time, actually, but they just zero Fs. Like they don't. Like they just like people talk. I hear people talk about like hunting brown bears on Kodiak, and they're like, if they wind you, they're gone, right? Like on spring hunt, and maybe that's the case. But all the bears that I've seen, like, didn't care, like, at all. Like, they're like, yeah, I'm king of the jungle. Like, it just, like, doesn't matter. Like, my brother torched a round off behind a bear that was, like, 50 yards away at one time. And it just kind of looked at us and then sauntered off.
Yeah.
Huh. How about that?
Yeah. Where we were at our fish shack, we found that it's weird. The ones these are black bears, I should be clear. But the older males, who you think are like the big tough ones, and they do they eat bears and all kinds of tough stuff, but they do eventually. By the time they're like a mature bear, there's a chance that they're going to get like quite skittish about it.
Okay, right.
And I think it's just from having, they're 10 years old,
right?
They just had enough run-ins to be like, these guys are trouble.
Why bother?
But Tony Russ has that. Tony Russ he's a guide. I never met him, but he's got a good book about Kodiak brown bears or brown bear hunting, and he describes like a major food source of those bears is brown bears, which makes them seem like not cool.
Right, exactly. Like, that's what that doesn't sound like an easy meal, I guess.
So you imagine that his chances, his odds against you are pretty good.
We've discussed here the idea of 'cause we got an indoor range here. If you're ever in the neighborhood, I'd be curious to see what people would be able to do to stack up against one another. But we talked about this with the Nice and Muckenhern.
Oh, right.
If you got like your bear mace or whatever, they make practice ones. I don't know if you've seen those where they're
it's inert.
Yeah, inert basically, but still the same experience and use. But we've got these moving target carriers that can get going pretty rapidly. And we thought like it's a 50-yard range. And if you set yourself up on some given line,
right,
some distance away from the target and had the person running the carrier just have that thing
full
sprint
blast
at you full blast. If you would be able to fiddle with your belt or your gear or whatever, get the thing off, get the safety tab, and spray said incoming bear, so to speak.
Or get to your pistol.
Prior to it hitting you.
Right.
We're designing something very similar that we're going to be doing soon. But we're going to roll a basketball down a slope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you can stand there with your 6-shooter and show us how many times you hit that basketball.
It sounds like it'll be entertaining to say the least. But
when it's my turn, I want to do it privately.
Right. I want some practice runs.
I prefer to do it privately. I'll tell you how well I did.
Yes, please do.
I'd go in with 2 basketballs, the one that I shot at and the one that I show as the result. I think.
Look, 5 holes.
I think what I find, we haven't done the simulation yet, but I think we will. But I think, and you might know this, Steve, but can't a brown bear? Can they run or can they sprint like 40 miles an hour? Is that
man?
Is that the thing?
You hear that? Yeah, 35. You hear these 35 mile an hour. I think when they put their mind to it, or whatever, like they're capable of those bursts. But the experiences that I've had and people I know have had and people I've interviewed have had, it's like it's either that you're so close,
right,
that you bump in the thick brush or coming around a corner, whatever, like, or it's on a carcass and you're in a willow patch, like it's so close that it's like it's feet.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
When I've seen them coming from any sort of distance, it's more like erratic.
Okay. Right.
Like run, stand up, stop, do this, do that, and like sure at some times are they hitting 35 miles an hour, but it's not like Search for the Holy Grail, Monty Python, where like from a mile away there's something just running at you at 35 miles an hour. It's like it's different. And people I've interviewed that've been hit, they're like it's feet.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
or yards. It's like feet or yards, and it's just there's no, does it really get going 30? Does it need to get going 35 miles an hour? It's just like it's just on you,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you hear that, but I don't think I've ever heard a story where someone's like, oh yeah, from 100 yards away, I could see a bear coming at 35 miles an hour that bowled into me.
So if we do the math here,
I clocked him at 35 as he came, but I think so. I guess
it's more like there's some flashes in the brush. It stood up, it woofed, and then all of a sudden it was biting me.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that's partially where I was going there though, because like you said, like I think in a lot of cases, like it's instantaneous. Like you're there, you're doing something, and then it's on you because it is like such tight quarters, or it is such crazy brush, and you've just run into the wrong situation. But I think about that. I guess I think about that 35, 40 miles an hour in the context of only having to go like 10 feet.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't think, like we're talking about time and.
Those are those times too where
I don't know.
People always talk about going out west and like everywhere out west is huge. You can see for miles everywhere. And it's like not always.
No.
Sometimes, like when you're talking about tight quarters, it's like sometimes you're out west and it's you're in there.
Oh yeah, you can see for miles, but you can't see what's 10 yards down the slope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We interviewed a woman that got mauled. There's an irony. Maybe I don't know. I always mix up what's ironic or not. She was a grizzly bear researcher.
Mm-hmm.
And they had these hair traps out, right?
Mhm.
They had these like rotten blood baits.
Mm.
And the baits are wrapped in like a barbed wire to pluck hairs for genetic work. She's out checking her hair traps, and lo and behold, runs into a bear. She described it as like it was very close when it realized she was there. They realized each other was there at the same time. There was only enough time to turn her shoulder. She's like, that's all I remember. Like I had enough time to like kind of like bury my face and turn my shoulder was all it was.
Brace for impact.
She kept her pepper spray. Like the only way to make, honestly, like in my view, the only way that makes any sense is on her chest.
Right.
She kept it on her chest. The bear started to maul her back and the back of her head. Actually punctured her skull, right? Without being able to see it, she was able to take her pepper spray and hose its face by like filling the gap between her shoulder and her face with spray.
Unbelievable.
And it dropped her.
Saved her life.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Shot it
dude.
over the shoulder at point blank range.
That is the ultimate no look.
That's you don't hear too many grizzly trick shots. That's one of them.
Yeah, that right there. I mean, seriously, that like
here, let me hold this mirror up.
Whew. Then you think about the fact too.
That's why I always carry a cosmetic mirror, Mark.
You want to impress your friends? You should put that in the book.
The old Annie Oakley.
There's been a addendum.
Boy, you get that stuff too. Like, I mean, you got all those open wounds now. You get that stuff in your open wounds. That's got to burn. I mean, everything already probably burns.
Sure,
and it's terrible.
Dude, it burns. It burns not. I'm more afraid of pepper spray than I am of bears.
I'm sure there's some
I
incidents.
saw there. I was reading about some incidental discharges of pepper spray in the book here. Doesn't sound like something.
When you get it on your stuff, man. Like, here's my advice: save your time and just throw it out.
Just get really.
You thinking that you're gonna like? Imagine the waist belt on a backpack, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This foamy. You know, you boil, like I've boiled it, and then I'm like, well, I'll boil it and I'll add Simple Green to the boiling water. And then the next time you start sweating and get any liquid, any moisture, it's just right back at you.
Jeez.
You just cannot, and it has an orange dye in it.
Okay,
and
right.
It's oily. I've been in one time just with someone that accidentally stepped on their PAX waist belt and broke the nozzle off a can, and it hosed everything. Another time I just got pickpocketed by some brush, basically like some brush like through my safety catch and then through the trigger too. And I'm standing there wondering what that noise is that's going.
Well, that's curious.
That's the jetpack feature. Didn't realize my pack had that.
Where's that coming from? All that stuff just has to be thrown out. You can't get it out.
That's crazy. Awful. Well, I think, it's like, I'll throw it in the washing. No, I've never done this, but, throw it in the washing machine. Now you've potentially contaminated your washer, your dryer, your kids' clothes, everything. You
think you got it, but you don't.
You don't got it. What does that say? They say it's like, it's basically the same kind of stuff that makes peppers hot, and it's just like, it's like a
capsicum.
Bazillion times more potent than like the hottest pepper is just this concentrated formula, is that bear mace or whatever. I mean, I just can't imagine. Like I remember at work we all tried crushing up some scary spicy peppers we found on some shady website online once, and crushed it up in some salsa and ate that. And like another guy tried cooking it into some spaghetti sauce. He actually had to evacuate his house because everybody couldn't breathe. It was like, I think, and he said that, like, I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. Like, he's known to over-exaggerate a few things. I do believe that he had to evacuate his house. He said that also in some of the corners of his house, the wallpaper began to peel. I don't know if that's real or not. But
Jim, every time you tell the story, like, here's where I don't know how you guys got to, hey, I've got a good idea. Let's go to this shady pepper website, get the hot, like, that something like that doesn't cross my mind. My buddy, now we're like on a pepper tangent. My buddy grew these peppers in his yard, in his garden, and we're just cutting them up to cook them. And there are these just like almost chartreuse, like lime green little guys.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even think he knew what he planted, but we're cutting them up in his house and like coughing. Like it was like becoming hard to breathe while we were just cutting up these peppers. I mean, we ate them.
You still ate them?
They're hot, but like I found that's the only time I've like cut up a pepper and been like, it was like, like I didn't even realize what was happening at first, because you're like, I wasn't expecting that. But
crazy stuff. Just makes you realize.
It's like a, maybe I'm wrong, man. It feels like a distinctly male thing.
To just eat really hot stuff.
To like buy pepper to be like, I heard that these are really painful.
Right.
Let's go get some.
Yeah. You know what? Let's measure our bravado today. Get some
right.
hot
Let's
peppers.
go get some and eat them. And you're like, by golly, that is painful.
there's
Everyone was right. Literally everyone who said it hurts
Yeah.
and you shouldn't do it was right. And I agree now.
Yeah. There's only one way to settle this. Who's the toughest?
That's right. That's how everything always works.
I love it. Steve, these getting back to these stories. Getting back to your stories and the book. I'm going to circle it back here. Try and get us back on track. I feel like we covered a lot of really important ground there. The stories you told are pretty like extreme, right? But one thing that I found in the book was like a lot of the stuff that's going to get you, that you're going to have an issue with, like not that extreme, like kind of like a benign, unassuming. Like I'll pull out a couple things. Selfie related deaths.
Yeah.
Or cooking accidents. Like, hey, Jim, you want to eat some dinner? And then the next question is, hey, do you know how to treat a severe burn?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of go from like this thing that's just like doesn't like seems like maybe a normal task, but stuff you need to be cognitive of or can be careful of or take precautions or know how to handle too.
We looked at some different organizations that keep data on this about, and you can find stuff through national park stuff, through groups like Knowles or various outfits that lead treks and expeditions about injuries that require evacuation. Okay. And also like injuries that are like trip ending injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So, we found some that found that the trip ending injuries are the leading cause is cooking. Fuel burns, which I've seen. Like I remember one of the worst injuries I've seen out, like an actual injury that I've seen, is someone that had an alcohol stove in the bright daylight and thought it was out.
Oh yeah.
And couldn't see the flame and went to pour alcohol onto the flame.
Oh my gosh.
Horrible burn on a hand. And then a lot of other, like the other thing is sprains.
Okay.
Like sprains are the leading cause of the leading trip ending accident cause. So you spend a lot of time, like we just done. It's fun talking about bears, man. It's like fun talking about bears, like debating, oh, my old trusty pistol, if that can't get it done, and the stuff that's out there, when you look at like what really happens to people, it's just like you said, it's just like benign things that we don't spend time talking about. Like when you go out to Alaska with your buddies, everybody's talking about what they're going to do for spray and what they're going to do for, but they're like, well, let's talk about what we're going to do to not get you burnt by boiling water.
I know.
That's like actually the problem. And then another thing is just microorganisms, man. I've been brought to my knees. I've been brought to my knees by multiple times, hospital grade stuff, by microscopic organisms, not macroscopic organisms.
Yeah.
Yeah. The stuff you can't see. But need to be aware of.
Insect-borne pathogens, waterborne pathogens are like cause real trouble to real outdoorsmen all the time.
And they're the worst things in so many regards because it's like, I mean, even when you get a sprain, nobody likes a sprain. Obviously that's like an understatement, but it can be trip ending. But you kind of you can brace it. You can do something different. You can like heat it, ice it, any number of things, and sort of help it. But when something's going on inside of you, there's no like you can't put a splint on that. You can't like bandage that. It just is happening.
Yeah.
And ugh.
Well, then a sprain.
Yeah, you enter into like bystander status.
Yeah.
But a sprain in the woods or on the mountain, very different than a sprain at the basketball game.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, as far as the severity of the situation.
Oh, I'm not downplaying those things, but yeah, it's just like there's something about external injuries where you see it, and even when it's terrible, you're sort of like you almost feel like you can do more about it.
Yeah. A lot of mystery with the microorganisms, and like you said, I mean, it shuts the whole system down potentially.
Oh, and it's a landscape that changes so much. Areas that if you take something like we spent a lot of time on Lyme disease, and my son had Lyme, I had Lyme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very serious for me for a while. The map changes all the time, right? New insect-borne pathogens pop up. Like the thing that's gotten a lot of press in recent years is that Lone Star tick.
Yeah.
That leads to that bizarre meat allergy, right? Where you're like meat proteins you develop an allergic reaction to.
Alfred Gall or something.
I mean, that's a worse nightmare.
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like we kind of in the book kind of encourage people to just stay informed about that stuff because of two reasons. I think that it's important to know what's going to get you, but it's also like reassuring to know what's not going to get you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like just like being like generally, like a lot of people like they feel that any tick in any place is going to give them Lyme.
Yeah.
So you get like a big ass wood tick on you in whatever Idaho, right? And like, oh my God, I got to start monitoring for Lyme. Like, actually, that's a whole different animal, man. That tick doesn't carry Lyme. That's not a Lyme disease bearing tick.
Right.
Like, you might have something else, maybe Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is way less prevalent, but like, you don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a panic attack because you found one of those on your kid's head.
Yeah.
So there's a by like kind of like studying up at like what matters and doesn't matter, and even to bring that around to macro things. Like you always hear people worried about mountain lions. It's like there is no compelling case to be made for giving mountain lions any thought.
Right.
They don't matter. Not that they don't matter as an organism. They don't, like, as a threat, think about something else.
Right.
Like, you can't make it make sense to worry about that.
In the hierarchy of things to be worrying about, probably don't have that one on your list.
Scratch it off your list.
I didn't even realize that one, actually.
I mean, you just get into like how many people in the nation are in proximity to them, and how we go years without fatality. It just doesn't matter.
Are there any cats that you'd have to? Cats confuse me. I don't know a lot about cats. But I remember when we were in Colorado, my wife and I went to Colorado, there was a big story going around about how some guy was out running on a trail and got mauled by a cat of some sort. Did that not happen? Was that like a made-up
lion? It was a mountain lion, and it wound up being like an emaciated 23-pound mountain lion. So like he strangled, he choked it out.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, was he running around with a stake glued to the back of his head?
To this dude's credit, we covered this pretty heavily on our podcast, but to this dude's credit, he never ran around acting like something happened that didn't. Right?
Okay.
The mountain lion jumped him, scratched him up. He killed it with his bare hands. He never like went on, Donahue or whatever talking about.
I love that you brought up Donahue.
Talking about like what a badass he is, right? But so he the dude never built it up, right? He went to the hospital, got checked out, but it wound up being after they did like a necropsy on this thing and they released some details about it, the story got less compelling. Because at first it's like, mountain lions get up to 160 pounds. It's like, oh my God, but it was like It was a juvenile, like a not well juvenile.
See, and then that's the case, though. So then people are like, "Oh yeah, exactly like you said." They're like, hey, "Be on the lookout for mountain lions. They're gonna attack you while you're running. You didn't even do anything, you know."
Right.
And it was just like, "Oh shoot."
At this point, we're uncertain if he didn't trip over a dead mountain lion.
You got it. There's a way the information flows online in a way that I think increases the people's feeling of risk, because the initial news stories get a lot more publicity than the later clarifications.
The follow-ups.
This will be pertinent to your audience in some ways, where one day I wake up and it must be that 100 people send me an article about some rare brain wasting disease having a connection to the consumption of squirrel.
Okay.
Eating squirrel brains. Okay. I don't eat squirrel brains, but eating squirrel brains. And some guy developed this like Jacob Creutzfeldt, whatever, like brain wasting disease. Everybody sends this to me. Bet you be thinking twice about eating them squirrels down. You know. Okay. It makes its rounds, gets picked up by every news organization on the planet. Okay. Squirrels will give you mad cow, and then winds up being, lo and behold, over time, it winds up being that there's been like 13 cases of this known in the country, this disease. Of those 13, one individual had in his past eaten a squirrel brain.
One time.
End of
at band camp.
Full stop. Full stop.
That's enough for me. I'm off the squirrels.
So, you know what I'm saying? But like, it's really frustrating the way that kind of like, and then no one shares that story.
Right. Right. No, I totally know that is frustrating. You know, I mean, or these gross inaccuracies, and it blows up, and it's an internet sensation. Everybody's talking about it. And then it's essentially like a retraction is like printed in small text somewhere.
Right.
Yeah. In his medical history, through the interviews they did with the guy, it was revealed that he had done this. And so the other 12 haven't.
Man dies at 96, once ate a steak rare. If you eat your steaks rare, you'll die.
Right. I don't even know how you draw that correlation. Like, we pinpointed it.
Oh, because someone got to snooping through the story. Yeah. And found this like thing. I need something to write today.
that'll get some clicks. That ought to do.
That could be a fact.
Oh, that's wild. It does make.
What was interesting about I'll tell you about the mountain lion thing that really rejuvenated is, I don't know if you caught it was 2 summers ago or 3 summers ago. Oregon had its first mountain lion fatality.
Right.
Meaning a lion killing someone. Had its first mountain lion fatality since statehood.
Wow.
Oh, that's a while.
Sorry. I can't remember which. So Washington and Oregon. One had its first mountain in the same summer. Had its first mountain lion fatality in 98 years. And the other one had its first since statehood in the same summer.
I think
it's a rising trend.
Yeah, right. The Washington, I think the guy was riding a bicycle or something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was really interesting, and it was like it was a strange thing, because one of the ways that we're treading into I'm treading into sensitive territory here. It was pointed out as an unusual lion attack. You don't even need to comment on this. It was pointed out, unless you want to. It was pointed out as an unusual lion attack because it was a man. And generally, when you have when lions kill people, it's generally like kids running around,
okay,
and women who just smaller stature, more whatever. And it was people reported on that it was unusual that it attacked and killed a grown man, but it wound up being a trans individual. And it was like in the official record, it was a woman that was killed.
Oh, interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it was like a very I tried to entice a friend of mine who he's not a hunter or anything, but he does a lot of stuff about animals. I tried to entice him to dig into that story a little bit and how that moved through the media. So I thought it was interesting coming when it did. But yeah, it was like an interesting footnote.
That is
hard to touch that one in today's day and age.
Yeah, I mean, I think
even if it's for science.
I was reluctant to mention it, but I said it was like as a person interested in that world, I was curious about that.
Well, yeah,
in the world of lion attacks, and
even if it's for science,
it doesn't.
It is an interesting just observation to note, you know. Yeah. But I'm sure some people are probably like, I don't know if we want to.
I think now if you look at it, I can't remember like what it describes, how the victim is described, but it was interesting because in the early descriptions you kept seeing conflicting reports.
Yeah,
of it being a man was attacked or a woman was attacked.
Oh,
interesting. I think you look at it though, and by the numbers, like what we were talking about earlier, as far as like the hierarchy of things you should be worrying about. Just a lion attack is unusual. Like just the fact that you're talking first recorded in state history type numbers.
Yeah.
Not that these things didn't happen. They're real events that happened, right?
Yeah.
But
I have a friend that handles. He does a lot of the Washington banned hound hunting for lions.
Right.
That's your home turf, Mark.
Yep. The only lion that we ever saw. In fact, I kicked it out to my brother. I was going through this gnarly bottom, and I kicked it out to my brother. Went into a clear cut. Was the year before tags went to over the counter. Before they banned before they banned the lion hunting, or the hunting with dogs.
We got to know. I'm trying to tell two stories at once. I'm going to get back to the one point, but I'm going to do the other point first. A friend of mine does a lot of the lion work for Washington, so he kills a lot of problem cats.
Okay,
he's a houndsman and cats that get into trouble and kill livestock, whatever. Like he trees and kills a lot of mountain lions. After this weird Oregon-Washington thing that same summer, we were kind of investigating a little bit, just talking to people, get their perspective on, is it like a freak? Like, is it like a total fluke? Is it indicative of something? And he said, man, I should point out, he was very much like, it's got to be a fluke. He's like, I bet you we'll go another 50 years and no one will get killed by a lion. But he said, an interesting thing is, when I started out in this business, he said, a mountain lion so much as looked at somebody, we killed it.
Oh, okay.
And he said, over time, his attitudes have changed about proximity to wildlife. It's like, you can have a lion do some crazy shit now, and people don't want to kill.
Right.
Yeah.
They might want you to go tree it and spook it, and then tree it again and spook it to sort of, that'll be a common request to sort of try to instill it with a fear of humans or a fear of barking dogs or whatever to try to train it. But he said it's just a real attitude change. So he said, am I surprised that we would in time sort of develop a population of mountain lions that were less fearful of people? Like, that doesn't surprise me, because everyone that used to even kind of butt up against civilization was a dead cat.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like, and now they're not. So,
Well, I mean, it just makes sense that they'd adapt to their surroundings and be like, oh, I was next to a human or a lot of people, and there wasn't like a negative repercussion. Like, why would I? It's almost like when you see deer in your neighborhood. A whitetail, when you go hunting for it, is like the most skittish thing in the world. You could be out watering the lawn with one eating your rose bushes 10 feet away. Doesn't care,
Yeah.
If you go back to the 1890s and see what happens when a deer shows up in your yard.
Didn't matter if you lived in a neighborhood.
No. There were no ordinances.
That's right. It was a better time.
My other thing about Washington, I was going to tell you about, after the hound, we got a letter from a guy, and he was in Washington, and he got into doing this. It's kind of crazy. He would go out and cut a track, when there's a new snow. He'd go cut a lion track and start following that track. And every time he got to like a good bedding area, he would predator call. Give it 15, 20 minutes, keep following the track, gets to another likely spot, he'd predator call. He wrote us that he was doing this, and we kind of talked about it. And then a while later, sure enough, sends in a picture, sits down in a clear cut, blows his predator call, 5 minutes later, standing there right in his face, and he got it.
No kidding, huh?
Yep.
Wild.
Like a sort of tracking, calling combo approach, which to me, dude, is the most badass way to kill a mountain lion of all ways, man. That's some good woodsmanship, man.
That is, man. That is. I mean, they're super cool animals. I've actually, the closest that I know I've been is that one that I kicked out to my brother, but I oftentimes think, because I've never seen one, I oftentimes like ask myself the question, I wonder how often, how many times I've been really close to one. And I bet it's more than I think.
Oh, for sure.
I've had a couple times where you get that sixth sense where the hair's just standing on the back of your head and you're just like, dude, I need to get out of here. I don't like it. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it.
That's you being like a deer.
Paranoid. I was actually, I remember I'm recounting another time I was hunting turkeys in the Blue Mountains, and it was super snowy, crazy quiet, like eerily quiet. The snowflakes were so huge and so heavy, and I was hunting by myself. It was like deafening silence. I don't know. It was bizarre. And I'm going down this road. It was snowing so heavy that my turkey decoy within seconds would be covered in snow.
Was this in your brother's old Supra?
No, I had the.
You'd already completely destroyed the transmission by then. All right, cool.
In the old International, and I see these 3 mule deer, and they're like 30 yards away, and I'm like, oh, dude, that's cool, man. Those deer are really close, since I'm just observing them, and I look down, and I'm standing in like a ton of fresh lion tracks and like tail sweeps in the snow, and I'm like, that was like another time I was like, I need to get out of here. I think, and actually, I did. I go, you know what? The turkey hunting sucks today. I'm going home.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That was. I remember thinking. I think my first thought was like, I'm not the only one that was watching these deer.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
boy,
cool stuff, man. Steve, we're probably running up on time here. Any parting words from your end? Oh, I did have a question. I'm going to lead you with this question. Any because this is a great book. Any notable lists that this book has made it on?
Well, fun you ask, Mark.
Great question.
That was like your segue, Jim.
That was.
It was it made it on the New York Times bestseller list.
Bam.
As a vanity metric, that has been a lifelong goal of mine to have a book hit that list. And it debuted. I think it did a couple weeks there. It debuted on the New York Times bestseller list, and then a variety of other ones. But that was a real I was real happy about that. Irrationally happy about making that.
I think it's a big deal. I mean, my question was like, in the book world. You know, like what kind of like, I mean, obviously like a personal, like, you know, like you said, you call it vanity. I mean, I think it's also a third party external endorsement of a damn good book.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the writer world, pretty big deal.
Yeah, because there's a lot of bestseller lists, like, you know, the USA Today, the Journal, Amazon keeps its own bestseller list, but no one's ever heard of those. I just don't know. But like, you know, your whole life you've been looking at your whole life, you know, have looked at books that somewhere on the cover is that little sticker that says like New York Times, but and I don't know, maybe in 20 years they won't hold it anymore, but they still, like, for whatever reason, it's, you know,
that's the sticker.
Like that, like to win an Oscar, right? Like for someone to win an Oscar for the film, sure, there's all kinds of film awards and stuff, but it's like one that people are like, dude, I've heard of that, you know.
Yeah,
that must be good. I've heard of it.
I watched a movie once. I've heard of the Oscars.
Yeah, and so it's just one of those things that like people know about it. You've been seeing it your whole life, and so to be able to have future, you know, to hit that was fun. As a concluder, though, I would like to point out my great affection and esteem for your guys' company, Vortex Optics, who are, like, besides the quality of the products, great people, all the constant innovations and just excitement about what you guys make. As far as for me and the show I do and stuff, to have had your guys' backing for all of these years, man, has been wonderful and great, and I really, really appreciate that. So I just want to point that out to your listeners that you guys were early believers in our show, and it's been just such a nice relationship over the years. So,
no, that's awesome, man. I mean, we appreciate
much appreciated.
Appreciate all the support from your. We started this with flattery, and we've ended it with flattery.
I still remember the first podcast I recall watching between Vortex and MeatEater was at the old building in Middleton, in some conference room with a bunch of plastic card tables all folded out, and discussed turkey hunting. That was many years ago.
That was many years ago.
But yeah, good stuff.
Super fun ride, Steve, and I mean, we definitely appreciate all you guys as, professionally and as people. Truly enjoy everybody on the team and your company and hanging out and the times that we've had to, enjoy the outdoors together. So it's definitely been it's been a fun ride. I'd say definitely a lot of interesting, just growth on both ends and all good stuff. So
yeah, I feel like that was a super nice note, and it would make for a good close. But I also feel like I'd be remiss to not ask Steve this one next question. Real quick though, before
Jim, you are engaging in a Wisconsin
this is a Midwest goodbye. I know. Yeah. We asked Giannis when he came on to podcast with Mark and I a little bit ago, and in fact, at the time of this recording, that episode only just released very recently, to do his best Steve impression.
Oh.
And I
haven't even heard this yet.
You haven't? Okay. Yeah, well, like I said, it came out fairly recently. He ended up it was less of like a long impression. It was more of just a funny quintessential Steve story on his part, where there was a quote involved, and it involved. You'd have to go back and listen to it, I think. But I'd be curious if you don't have anything right off the top of your head, because this is kind of putting you on the spot.
This isn't on the spotter.
And on the spotter, do you have though like a really good quintessential Giannis either story or like impression, some sort of a thing where like you're just this immediately makes me think of Giannis when
as my wife knows, I am incapable of doing impressions. But I'll do I'm going to do a me, then I'm going to do a Giannis. Or I'm going to do I'll be the role of life.
Okay.
And then I'll tell you when I'm being Giannis. So the role of life is, the life says to Giannis, or someone, me, life, whoever, says to Giannis, Giannis, I need to alert you to the world's hugest problem. This is an insurmountable problem. Life will never be the same. This is the most horrible thing in the world. I'm going to tell you, you might as well die after I tell you this. It's so bad. Here it is. Here's the thing, right? And I tell the thing. He would be, okay. That's my guy.
I could see that. It's very fitting just from the limited interactions I've had that compare in relativity to you, but that's funny.
He's processed this thing completely, and the response is, okay.
Yeah.
I like it. That is awesome.
That's good. It's good to have somebody like that at your side, though. They always keep you level.
Dude, it is very, very nice to have someone like that around.
when you're in one of these, hopefully you're not in one of these survival situations.
That's right.
But you need a Yanni to keep us cool.
That's right. Awesome.
All right, guys.
Thank you, Steve.
Awesome.
Appreciate you joining us. Thanks, everybody, for listening, as usual.
You guys are timely as all get out, man. It's actually
on
the nose.
Right on the 30 mark there. So, well done. But
you guys ever need a job, come give me a shout.
That's good to know.
I'll show up with my knapsack.
That's good to know. If things get a little sketchy around here, they decide we've had our time. But cool. Well, thanks everybody as usual for listening. Go check out, if you're not for some reason familiar yet, check out this book, and also just check out MeatEater. Follow them on social media and all that good stuff. Watch them on Netflix. It's all excellent stuff. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Hey, man, I'll talk to you guys later. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yep.
All right.
Take care.
See ya.
What's up, everybody? At the very beginning of this podcast that you hopefully listened to the whole thing because it was awesome, we alluded to how you might win this exact book sitting in front of me right now, The MeatEater Guide to Wilderness Skills and Survival by the Stephen Rinella. Now, Jim, How might a person do that?
Well, all you got to do is submit a story with a great photo along with that story. And what's the story going to be about exactly? Well, we've all had those, insert 4-letter word here. Just like Steve talked about in our podcast, we've been out in the wilderness. And hopefully, maybe in that craziness or afterwards, you were able to take a picture of the carnage that ensued, and
the incident.
Hopefully you're all right, because we don't want to see all these at your own expense. But anyways, if you've got something like that, send that picture with the description into us via direct message on Instagram to the main Vortex Optics Instagram page. That is at Vortex Optics. The best story, which is a bit up to our discretion, admittedly, but the best story is going to win this book, and it is actually signed by the one and only Stephen Rinella as well. So that is very cool. Now, if you don't have the best story, that's okay, because there are going to be some runner-up winners for some other really good ones that we get, and those folks are going to win some Vortex wear items like Mark and I are wearing right now. Now, tell them when this is happening.
Right, Jim. This offer is good for a limited time only, so you need to make your submission between February 15 and 18, 2021, the year we're in right now.
Yes.
At press time. And, see if you can't get this book.
Exactly.
Or some sweet apparel.
Exactly. So submit your stuff within that time frame, and we'll see who wins. Best of luck, everybody. Can't wait to read your stories. All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.